Welcome to Destined for Success. I'm your host, Jennifer Takagi, and today we're talking with a friend of mine, Therese Johnson, and we're talking about her path to success and also how she helps others get on their path to their highest level of good and highest level of success. Hey, Teresa, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. It's such a delight whenever I'm with you.
We've had a lot of fun together over the months, haven't we?
We have.
Well, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your history, your background, and why you're so passionate about all of this?
So I'd love to. I am a gerontologist and I'm an educator for the California State Board of Registered Nurses as well as the California State Legislature. I have a company called Senior Care of Sacramento. We're a referral placement agency and we help seniors find assisted living, boarding care, and in-home care. And we save the caregivers, which is the daughters and daughters-in-laws mostly, 95% of them, caregivers. We save them time, energy, and money by helping them get over overwhelm and burnout by taking some of that pressure off them and giving them a day off. So that's part of my passion. My other passion is that I'm a Reiki master, like very similar to you. I know you're a Reiki practitioner as well. And
Yeah.
I've been a Reiki master for 20 plus years, and that is my really true passion. And I love doing energy work. And I love to use my medical background as a gerontologist and my Eastern medicine philosophy as a Reiki practitioner to bring the two of the best worlds together. I call it East meets West, and I plan to have a new radio show. I had one previously called Senior Moments, and my new show is going to be called East meets West, coming up in the future, so that I can talk about the best of both worlds, Western medicine and Eastern medicine. And my my road to success, I guess, or my thoughts on success are, I think that we can all be successful uh, just by, being happy, frankly, you know? And I think that's a big issue. And I believe that, we need to look for happiness from within, not from outside of ourselves. So if we're able to do that, I'd say that's a big success right there in and of itself. Wouldn't you agree?
I do, and I love that, and I love that your idea of East West because I'm totally a both and girl. Also, I have this crud going on, and I did all my Eastern kind of healing work on it, and when it didn't go away, I went and got an antibiotic because I need it to be gone quickly. I could wait it out, but I don't have time for that. I'm ready for it to be gone. Sometimes we need surgery, sometimes we need medication. So I'm totally about the both and, not a either or. So I love that you are too. And that happiness from within, that kind of reminds me of that thing like we have a choice in every moment how we're going to respond to situations. Um, and that kind of leads to that happiness situation, right? We choose how we're going to respond and what we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have a little bit of a crisis going on in our nation right now as we're all coming out of the pandemic, and people need to, regroup and reframe a lot with all the issues that we were kind of thrown into as a result. And a lot of people lost their businesses. And so trying to get back on the horse after, having a lot of devastating things happen, some people might be struggling with seeing the happiness and they might be suffering with some loneliness and bitterness. And so I would love to give some recommendations on how people can address those issues and maybe have a different perspective from where they're coming from and give them the modalities of some healing methods that might be help facilitate them in their thinking and their perspective. So I think being a Reiki master and working with energy is, like I said, my passion. And the thing that about energy work that can really help people with changing their perspective or bringing them to a different perspective or a way of dealing with their symptoms of loneliness or sadness or becoming more motivated is a lot of easy ways to do that are with music therapy, which I like to recommend to a lot of my patients. And I found to be very helpful and had great results. So you can YouTube frequency medicine, and there's all kinds of stuff comes up for loneliness, sleep issues, anxiety, and they you can listen to those at any time of the day or when you're sleeping, and it's very helpful and it helps heal the brain chemistry and the brain waves, because my specialty as a gerontologist is dementia. And so I like to use alternative natural remedies, and we really don't have any cures for dementia, but I have found that alternative medicine is very helpful. And I actually worked with a doctor colleague friend of mine who was able to reverse Alzheimer's dementia in many of her patients using alternative holistic remedies. She started with her dad, who had stage 4, and was able to reverse it after 4 years. And when he was 80, and he ended up being able to play golf and drive till he was in his 90s. So it was pretty exciting, and all with using alternative medicines and remedies. So
Well, that is, I mean, it's so good to hear. My mother-in-law had dementia, and it was very hard to navigate. And I'm going to use the term deal with her. That doesn't sound very nice, but it's kind of what it was. Like, I wasn't allowed in her house for like a year because she thought I went through her vacuum cleaner bag to look at her dirt. And you can kind of laugh at it a little bit because it's so bizarre that that was what she focused on, but it can be really hard on the caregivers as well as the person suffering with it. So I love the frequencies. I love listening to some of the healing. Was it 437 hertz or something? 492 is a healing hertz level that, I mean, it's just, you just feel better when you do it. So I had a call with a gal the other day, and I realized she was telling me the same story again, and she doesn't have dementia, but it's caught up in that cycle of bad things happen to me. Let me tell you about how bad they are. And she started over to tell me the whole horror story again about, something didn't go right and there was a financial loss involved. And I had to really work hard to get her to stop telling the same story, because we can get in those loops. So I love that you have multiple ideas on how we can get better, but specifically, do you have something to address those loops of thoughts? Because that's what happens. We get into that thought pattern and then we don't get out of it. And then we feel even worse.
yes, in fact, I wrote an article on that is similar. It was called Dementia and Reiki, but the technique that I used in that article it can also be used for other issues when people are stuck in a situation. Usually it's usually trauma related or post-traumatic stress related, something that happened, like you said, and they're stuck in that loop. And as a rule, if you, I, I found what I was using with my patients when I had a assisted living care home. Some of my patients that we had with difficult behaviors, because they were stuck in a loop like that, I combined the two techniques together. One's called validation therapy, and one's called, and the other is Reiki. So if you use them separately, they're not as effective, and the validation therapy may only work temporarily. But if you add the Reiki to it, it can permanently give you permanent results of eliminating the behavior or the thought pattern that they can't seem to break out of. And the validation therapy really has a lot to do with somebody listening and hearing them and mirroring them what their story is. So if somebody's telling them the story, and you as the listener can hear them and then repeat back to them, that's what we call mirroring. It's a mirroring technique. If you repeat that back to them, then they feel heard. So for example, my one client, she was very paranoid all the time, and accusing her roommates just of like stealing toothpaste and, making life very difficult for my nurses and everything and all the other residents in the home. So I had a conversation with her and about asking her, just talking to her to try and get to the bottom and figure out what was going on with her and what was disturbing her and causing her paranoia. And I had a few conversations with her, and it finally came out that somebody had stole something from her that was very precious to her when she was young. And so it left the scar on her where it caused her to be paranoid about everything. Like she had been, she felt victimized by and betrayed by that theft. And so when I was able to acknowledge her and tell her, I'm so and sorry that happened to you, and that must have been really awful when, that person took that precious item from you that meant so much to you, and you lost that. And when after she had felt heard and acknowledged for her loss, she was able to finally let it go and move on from that issue. And I also was giving her Reiki treatments while I was in between having the conversations with her. And it was about 2 or 3 conversations and about 3 Reiki treatments. And after that, she stopped the paranoia behavior. She stopped accusing people of stealing from her. And it just made so much more harmony in the care home that it was just, she was one of my ornery clients, I got to say, but she kept things interesting and very spicy for all of us still. But she was quite a character. But at least we were able to eliminate that behavior pattern that was very disruptive to the other residents in the home and to my nurses and myself when you're having to deal with that on a daily basis when somebody's accusing somebody of doing something that they didn't do, stealing, for example, or whatever the case may be. So I find that technique has been well proven and seems to work very well, I think, with a lot of those issues.
Well, and I think that you make a really valid point that this theft happened many years before, and we move on with our lives and just assume that we've moved past it. Pardon me. And we think we have, but it's still there. Like the injury is still there and it's still on us, and then shows up, in my opinion, typically at the most inopportune time. So what can I do for myself? Like if I'm feeling that, like you say, the isolation and the loneliness and things didn't get, some people did really well during the pandemic, other people not so well. And if I fell into the category of not so well, like what can I personally do for myself to pull myself out of it a little bit?
So the slump that a lot of people got into with the loneliness and not being able to socialize, I would say, first of all, just start simple. Set some small achievable goals for yourself. Start, by saying hello to a neighbor or joining a local club. And then, and focus on the importance of meaningful connections, even if it's just with a few close friends or family. And then in order to build your self compassion. So, and challenge your negative self-talk, because a lot of us are plagued with that. And one of my techniques that I used from, when I was in my 20s raising my kids, I was a follower of Louise Ann Hayes, who wrote the book Heal Your Life by Louise Ann Hayes. So I don't know if you know her, but she's since passed, but she was always one of my heroes, because I just loved her, that she healed herself from cancer with positive self-talk. The thought that anybody could heal themselves with positive self-talk, especially coming from a medical background, I was very skeptical. But I read her book and I practiced her techniques with my children when they would get sick, and lo and behold, they worked. And so I'm really an advocate of positive self-talk. And so when I started training, the way I started training myself to get rid of that little voice in my head,
That
and
chatterbox back there.
yeah, my one of my best friends and colleagues, her and I call it stinking thinking, is what we call it. And so when we get that stinking thinking in our head, we reframe it and change whatever that negative thought was. And also, the other thing that I found really useful that I did was I created a mantra that I would say whenever a negative thought would come into my brain. And so basically, over the last 30 years or so, I trained my brain and it gets by using the mantra. Whenever something would come into my head that was negative, I would say uh, joy, love, and abundance, or peace, love, and harmony, or Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, or some little mantra. And then after a while, my brain just learned that, okay, whenever you send something negative, we're just shutting you down, like right now with this mantra, this positive mantra. And my brain started sending me less and less negative self-talk. So that's a technique that I have found that works really well for me. And so it's one option that you can try. And the other thing is you can notice when the negative self-talk comes in, and you can, if you are aware and be conscious of that, and then try and reframe it. So if you can reframe the negative self-talk, that is going to serve you much better, and not only you, but those around you. And then I would also, say just loneliness is it's a common experience, and there are many resources available to overcome it. Uh, you, I recommend to a lot of my seniors who suffer with that, because they're as they get older, that loneliness is a huge thing in the senior population, because let's face it, they're as aging is only for the courageous, because you go through a lot of grieving processes in the aging process. You're a lot of people are losing their hearing, their eyesight, their independence. They can't drive. They're losing friends, and so it's just one loss after another. And so trying to stay positive through all that, and dealing with the grief that goes along with losing your independence and your physical abilities can be challenging. So getting out and being social is the number one most important thing for a healthy mindset and lifestyle. And this has been proven through many clinical studies and research that's been done. And it also is the number one factor that will help you to live longer.
My grandmother, she passed away in 2005, so it was well before 2005, and she was in her 90s. And one time she said, the hardest part about getting old is you outlive all your friends. And I kind of made an unconscious decision there that has continued to be quite conscious, of having people in my life that are younger, and some of them quite a bit younger, and we have really close relationships, and we're in various places of our lives. But I need to be around those younger people to know what's going on and what's going on with them, and have them care for me and I care for them, because it could end up one day that, my peeps are gone. So I need some younger people in my life and my world. So I have a broad spectrum, age wise, chronological age, that is, of friends. And I think that can really help. We can get in a mindset of, oh gosh, they're not my generation, I'm not going to play with them. And I'm like, ooh, I heard a talk one time about the generational workforce and how different it is. And I was like, oh wow, like I want to be that. Like I want to have multiple generations in my circle of influence and people I play with, because one day you're going to need more people.
Well, that's true. My playground as a gerontologist and in being in the field of geriatrics is obviously the elderly, and my patients and clients are all in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100-year-olds. And to be honest, I love the elderly. I didn't really have any grandparents growing up because my dad was an orphan, and and so I guess maybe it's filled a void for me not having a grandparents. But I just find the seniors fascinating. They're a wealth of history and wisdom. I have gained so much wisdom from all my clients and patients that I work with that it's just a never ending wealth of, knowledge that I get from them. So I really enjoy being with them. Um, so what some of the other things I would recommend is that people explore their interests and hobbies, like you were saying, and get out and do activities that they enjoy, which can lead to meeting people and sharing similar interests, and getting back into that whole realm of socializing now that we're able to get out and about again. And the other thing that I find really helpful, when sometimes I get depressed, especially a lot of my clients, I'm having to counsel them through um, a lot of chaos, frankly, and crisis, frankly. When they call me, they are uh, a lot of times, dealing with situations that are not that joyful. And so it can take its toll sometimes. I'm I'm an empath, so I'm very empathetic. And on occasion, when I notice myself slipping into a little depression or sadness, uh, I what I do is I'll go out and do some service work. So volunteering is really good. When you get down, if you go out and volunteer and help somebody else who's less fortunate than you, it's remarkable. It just snaps me right out of it. I just come right out of the depression and I feel so much better. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I have to be, sad or depressed about? I'm so blessed, And the minute I go out and help somebody else, I immediately and do be of service in the community, or, at my church, or wherever, go ring the bell for Salvation Army, whatever it takes, then that always snaps me out of it. And also, what I really like, and I recommend to a lot of my seniors who aren't really familiar with this, because it's more of a new generation thing, is the meetup groups. The meetup groups online are fabulous. They're fantastic. And there's meetup groups for all kinds of interests and hobbies. You name it, it's out there. I mean,
I went and I was looking at one. I had a girlfriend. I still have a girlfriend who's single, and she was looking for a guy, and she was like, well, where do you find good men? Blah, blah, blah. I want to go hang out at a bar or whatever. And I went on Meetup and I was like, oh my gosh, look at this one. It's a wine and cheese tasting every month, and they rotate houses. Like, if I liked wine, I don't, but she does. And I were single, I'm not, she is, I would totally have signed up for that. Like, go meet people, get out. So they do. They have it for everything. It was like, man, this whole meetup is around wine and cheese and single people like over 40 or whatever the age group was. But yeah, meetup is a really great place.
Yeah, I belong to a group that does hiking, and I live in the foothills, and I always say I'm very blessed. I live in God's country because I live in the foothills of Auburn, which is, just below Lake Tahoe. And we have so many lakes and rivers and hiking trails here. So that's been that was my very first meetup group that I went to. Then I also went to one for, oh, I don't know, I was getting interested in stocks, and I went to meet all these people that talked about stocks, and just picked their brains and said, hey, what are your tips? And so, like I said, there's ones out there for all kinds of stuff. So I don't know how much time we have left, but I want to also give one other tool that people can use. There's if they really have, like you said, they're stuck in that loop and they have that conversation going on, and they need somebody to listen, to hear them, and they need to talk to somebody. There's a couple of really great apps, mobile apps out there that are really they're free to access. Usually you get 1 week free, and they're very minimal and not invasive and very private. I know a lot of people, there's a taboo about going to counseling or therapy. And so this you can do in the privacy of your own home. There's one called Talkspace, and there's one called BetterHelp. And these are great apps that you can use to talk through, some of your issues that haunt you or traumas that you've been through that just keep popping up, or if you're having trouble with these negative self-talk, talk to somebody about it. And sometimes just talking about it and getting it out of you or writing it down, I find that helps alleviate that, so you can move on and be more joyous and happy in your life.
Oh my gosh, I love that, Teresa. The one thing you didn't say, but I think you kind of said without using the word, is that whole gratitude practice. So you go and volunteer and you help somebody who is less fortunate than yourself in whatever way. And then you can feel more grateful for what you have. So that just kind of like brings it all together. It gets you out of that thought pattern that you have going on. This has been some great information today.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, and the other thing is, I don't watch the news, frankly. I mean, I'll read it and I'll watch it on a rare occasion. But sometimes, if I get depressed, I'll turn on the news, and that's enough to snap me out of my depression too long, because the news, unfortunately, tends to be so negative. Uh, and if you look at what's going on in the other parts of the world, but then again, sometimes that's not the best thing to do, because it can also be overwhelming and then just make you even more depressed. So you have to kind of pick and choose what works for you. Different things for different strokes for different folks. You know what I mean?
Well, it was funny the other day. Somebody said, part me, she said, well, it was on the news. And I said, oh, I don't watch the news. And like her neck just almost snapped looking around at me like, you don't watch the news? And another woman was there and she goes, it's true. It's true. Jennifer does not watch the news. And it was like, somebody's going to tell me what's going on. And then if I need to look into it, I will. But you get into those loops, and I don't care what channel it is. It doesn't matter. If you're watching the news 24 hours a day, you are totally screwing with your mental well-being.
That's very true. And especially with the politics. And yeah, when 9/11 happened, I was running a care home, and one of my residents was a veteran, and they just bombarded everybody and played that scene over and over and over again. The poor man had a stroke, and I said, okay, that's it. We're turning the TVs off, and enough of this, because it was just like it was
Constant trauma.
yeah, it was just re-traumatizing people. So
Yeah.
it was not good. And I had a lot of my patients that came to me after 9/11 we had a huge rise in bipolar disorders from the trauma from that. So yeah, you really want to be protective of the stimulus that you allow into your brain. I mean, I even with my kids and stuff, and some of the younger generation, my daughter, she had a slumber party once, and they thought that this was going to be a great idea to watch this horror show, Chainsaw Massacre or something. And they're like 12 years old. I'm saying, are you guys, I go, I really don't think this is something you guys want to put in your psyche. I go, I wouldn't watch this. And they go, oh, it's just fun and joking entertainment. I go, yeah, but it's not that's not my idea of entertainment. I'm sorry. And so I did have them turn it off. And I know this one little girl, oh my God, she was so grateful. She was just like so relieved that I came in and turned that off.
It's funny because when I was 12, 13, 14, I was 100% convinced absolutely nothing on those shows could ever happen. Like it was like a cartoon to me. Like it did not impact me at all. Then I turned about 16 or 17, and it was like, wow, some of this stuff could actually happen. And that's when I started having nightmares at those movies and quit watching them, because maybe not all of it, but some of it could happen.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to let you know. And so I'm really big. Jack Canfield, the co-founder of the Chicken Soup for the Souls books and the book, The Success Principles. When something negative comes at you, you just say, cancel, cancel. Like, I'm not going to take that in. No, cancel, cancel. I'm out on that. So bad things do happen. It's not that we're oblivious to it, but at the same time, we don't have to take it all in. And we need to protect our mental well-being. Volunteering is good. Meetup groups are good. Getting out and about, really good. And have a very positive mantra like joy, love, and abundance when you start having negative thoughts. I love all this, Teresa. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, Jennifer, and so good to see you again. Thank you for having me on your show. You're just amazing. I think you're awesome with everything that you do and the support you provide for people.
Oh,
Incredible.
thank you. It was so good to see you again.
You too.
I'm Jennifer Takagi with Destined for Success, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.